a layer of sort of extroverted functions that can sort of animate the South Dock. That will also take up a 40-foot wide part of the actual dock in the form of a boardwalk and bring it to the level of the Pier Park. And the same along all of the festival halls to create this sort of undulating landscape of boardwalks that actually connects with the second level. So this is the view. Sort of you see like parts of the boardwalk dipping down into the water, and parts of it moving up to connect with the landscapes higher up. Here in front, like rather than having this sort of relatively blank facade, we imagine this sort of landscape of undulating boardwalks would actually allow people to access programs on the upper floors that could spill out onto the terraces and also create shade for the boardwalk along the South Dock. This diagram shows you the South Dock is very busy. It performs a lot of services for the pier and also for the boats. And this sort of undulating line, this red line, actually indicates the different points of entry on the different boats. And as well, you have this sort of series of elements, like various necessary installations that actually perform necessary functions, and that creates this sort of messy, noisy atmosphere. And what we propose is to basically redesign all of these elements and integrate them into this undulating boardwalk as this sort of continuous experience that really goes from smaller furnitures to lamps, to various elements for seating, to create sort of a public landscape that has an incredible diversity of use, but that is sort of woven into this sort of continuous transformation of the boardwalk itself. Also the different level changes can be incorporated, and the kiosks and ticketing for sort of providing access to the boats creates this sort of continuous transformation of the entire South Dock in a sort of continuous man-made landscape. At the end of the wide South Dock, we imagine a fountain where people can actually enter into the fountain and really get wet without necessarily jumping into the lake, and with these sort of exploding jellyfish of water. Having arrived either from the South Dock onto the higher level or through the hydroponic gardens, you can see this is the 40-foot extra width that brings people straight up to the Pier Park. We imagine to continue this public escalation and bring people all the way to the roof of the Shakespeare Theatre and the parking. In doing so, we imagine to incorporate the proposed extension of the Shakespeare Theatre into this man-made hill that is comfortably sort of contained within the hill itself. We open up to create these sort of terraces that capture views of the skyline of Chicago, of the pier itself. And we imagine this sort of a gigantic stair that is actually divided into areas with steps for seating, areas with steps for walking, and finally a smooth slide. So essentially, this element becomes one of the most sort of visual and visible sort of extensions to the landscape of the pier, and from the outside, it's going to be a major part of the public perception of the new pier. Here you see how the theater is comfortably contained within the giant stair, and how other programs can actually spill out onto the stair. At night, you'll see the activity and the life inside this like man-made hill spill out onto to the Pier Park. It's this sort of public spectacle. In this case, it's Times Square, the big red steps. So basically, like stairs have incredible purpose for like informal hangout spaces. And also, this is the current view when you go to the top of the parking. And in the future, it could be looking down over this public landscape, enjoying the activities in the park itself. In the winter, we imagine. Snow tubing could be sort of part of the stair. And having just returned actually last night from my ski holidays in Park City, I recently tested the technique, and it still works. So essentially, rather than having a big piece of parking infrastructure in the middle of the pier, to create this sort of amazing new destination, and we imagine that several times a year, like big public spectacles could sort of invade this man-made hill, and the Ferris wheel itself could become the backdrop of this new exciting space. Moving on along rapidly, having arrived to the roofscape, we imagine that the vaulted ceilings of the festival halls could be slowly colonized by this sort of a series of garden tapestries. We imagine that the garden festival from the festival halls could actually spill up on the roof, and over a series of years, we would gradually create this sort of roofscape where you could have an ongoing garden exhibition. So for returning visitors, it would be like a new experience. And finally, we imagine at the end, we propose to simply tilt the end of the pier, dipping down into the water and lifting up, creating these steps that actually bring the life of the pier down into the water, where you can really touch the lake, creating a sort of an informal amphitheater for sort of public experiences. And finally, nested under the tilted pier, a sort of an amazing restaurant that captures the view of the lake. Sitting at the end of this tilted pier end, we imagine the pinnacle fountain is going to be a fountain that has the same scale as the lake itself. It can blow water up 500 feet in the air. And we imagine that with our proposed Pier Plus app, people would be able to actually take control of the fountain and actually themselves sit and blow water 500 feet into the air. The app is part of a proposed redesign of the pier identity, including the name Pier Plus, and the proposal of creating a community for card holders. We've made a series of scenarios. I'm not going to go through them. We don't have a lot of time. But maybe just one thing that could be interesting to look at, a user group called The First Date. Arriving at the beachfront cocktails, moving along the undulating landscape to the Lakeview Terrace, have a wonderful dinner, hang out in the beer garden for a while, go back through the tapestry gardens onto the top of the hill, looking at the people and the pier, maybe going for a ride in the Ferris wheel, maybe renting a paddle boat, and finally crossing the big plaza to take off on a tandem bike from the tandem bike rental, making it the most hectic first date in the history of Chicago. But essentially, you can imagine like different user groups, and even like for an avid runner, this like three-dimensional landscape would be an amazing extension of the life on the pier. This brings to the lighting and Keith.
Great. I've got a